Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. And, of course, he's won a Super Bowl. He's in the Hall of Fame. And he's joining us on behalf of Body Confident Sport. He's the one and only Steve Young, and he joins us here on the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. How are you?
Thanks, Doug. Great. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, man.
That's great.
I'm really, really good. It's crazy. A lot of different elements to what you brought to football are in this game, right? In mobile quarterbacks, quarterbacks that can play in and out of the pocket, improvise, move, obviously toughness. And I'm intrigued in your thoughts on both these guys, since professionally and personally you've done this since you retired.
Right.
Help me out with Brock Purdy, because I think there's a portion of people that are like, well, I love the story.
Right.
And that overwhelms them in terms of how they look at the player. And then there are people who I would put myself in this camp. It's like, I love the story, I love the kid, but there have been times in the playoffs where he hasn't played as well as he had been playing in the regular season. Quarterback to quarterback, what do you see when you watch Brock?
So it's really important that you listen to Brock after the game last week against the Lions, when he said, look, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest, and I'm not the biggest. And so you have to just take that in and say, today's prototype of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, like, these are big, strong, stiff-arm defensive linemen, run out of the pocket, throw it 80 yards down the field. That's the prototype. I'm very familiar with that prototype, but that is not Brock, and Brock is okay with that. Very clearly, my superpower is give me a play. Luckily, it's from Kyle, an innovative play. I have wonderful people around me, and what my superpower is, I'm Indiana Jones. In 2 seconds or less, I can decipher everything that's happened because I'm so ahead of the data. I have this feel for 11 on 11, and I can find the spot, and it's coming out. And it's coming out early, and it's coming out in front, and the yak is going to be amazing, and that is so much of quarterbacking. He is the most, like, how are you going to say this, but this season, you could make an argument he's the most efficient quarterback in the league. And so you just have to take both of those in. I'm not the biggest, I'm not the strongest, I'm not the fastest. Okay, not the prototype. Okay, I was an oddity back 20 years ago. And so he's okay with being an oddity, but what he's not odd at is the very fundamentals of what makes you a great quarterback. And so in that way, I say he has the force, like the Star Wars force. Sure. Like you can't explain it, but you see it and you know it.
What are those fundamentals?
It's the ability to, first of all, do the work behind the scenes, the data ownership, reflexive recall. You see him when there was a play, in the first playoff game when he had to hold the motion because it was running out of time. Don't worry about it. I got that handled. And then he made the play, and then he had to scramble out and find. Like, he has a sense of spatial relationship with 22 people, and his body doesn't. The adrenaline goes up for most human beings, and the mind goes shorter, smaller. The aperture closes. He doesn't. He's
Flatliner.
Like total flatliner. Yeah. And so that's DNA. That's preparation, and then it's just reflexive recall. So for him, he's as efficient as anyone who's played because of those things that are the superpowers. The problem that everyone else in the league has said, or all the detractors, well, he can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, he's telling you, I'm good with that. I can't do that. If that's the measure, then I'm not that guy. So stop. But everything else, I got you. And so what I've always said is, let Brock cook, because he can't stiff-arm defensive lineman, go out and throw 60 yards down the field or whatever else. He might have to do it in two throws instead of one throw. So his job is a little bit more difficult than Patrick's, but let him figure that out. And in his efficiency, he gets it done.
Okay. Why have they been struggling in the playoffs?
Something happened at the Ravens game. The 49ers of Thanksgiving, I was like, who's going to beat these guys? This is the best collection of talent in free agents history. Like, you'd have to go back 20, 30 years ago when you see this much supreme talent in one place, both sides of the field. John Lynch has done that amazingly. Deployed the way that Kyle deploys them, and Brock doing his things, like, no one's going to beat him. Then 2 weeks later, they get mauled by the Ravens. I mean, they literally got mauled. And something changed. And so that defense that we saw against the Lions last week, it feels like you want to say whatever the wide nine or whatever they're doing, people have got a book on it now.
Yeah.
That's what you want to. You want to say they've got it figured out, but then you think to yourself, wait a second, all that talent, you can't figure out talent. That's got to show up. And so I told the team earlier, you got to flip the script. You cannot play championship football down 24/7 at halftime. Now you showed grit, you showed amazing,
Just
toughness.
The margin for error is so
yeah,
slight when you get that way.
and now you have a quarterback that will take you down.
Yeah.
Jordan Love was young; he couldn't wrap it up, but you can't play this way. So the first quarter, get a feel. Does it feel like the playoff games the last couple of weeks? That's trouble. If it feels like back in Halloween, back in Thanksgiving, then they're running the football very effectively, going right down the field. Defense is putting Patrick in some tough spots early. Then you're like, okay, this is the team that I saw at Thanksgiving that is going to go run over everybody.
I do want to ask you about Patrick. You've played against this unbelievable list of Hall of Fame quarterbacks in your era, right? Behind Montana, then you in your own right, and Elway, and you saw them all.
Marino, Aikman, Favre.
I mean, just Roethlisberger, whatever. Is he? If you had to say he's closest to, is it Elway? Is it you?
Well, he combines a lot of different pieces to people. I think that what you first have to know from Patrick when you first saw him play, there's a presence. And like we just talked about flatliner.
Yeah.
He is flat. Yeah. Like he is playing backyard football in his mind. Like it's as if he's in his backyard. Like, hey, he's as calm and peaceful and present as if he was in his backyard tossing the ball. Now that's impossible. Now you put on top of that the talent, the arm talent, throw it all over the place, all the different arm angles, and then the intellect for the game. So it's like he's Superman, and the best part of his game is that he has now taken the cape off and realized that Clark Kent is as much a part of playing great quarterback than putting on the Superman cape. And so he's now, in my mind, especially after I called the Taylor Swift era, the first half of the season they were overwhelmed with just the madness. It was no one's fault. It's just madness. I feel like that whole thing has now empowered them. They've gotten over the top of it. Now they've got, and so he and his, he's on top of all of it. And I don't think there's nothing that can throw him off his game. He's gonna be Clark Kent early in the first quarter. He's not gonna try to put the cape on too early. He's matured. I mean, he's the best player in the league, and he's getting better.
Let me circle back to Kyle. You mentioned how they put him all in the right spots. Is he the new Walsh? Because
yes.
Yeah, because and I know our minds are probably working the same way. People remember the West Coast offense transformed football.
People couldn't defend it.
No, couldn't stop it, and it became they had anybody who knew the West Coast. It spread throughout football, right? That's what that's what changed the Packers,
yes.
Right? And you kind of go through.
Change the Eagles. Then follow Andy Reid. Follow Mike Holmgren. Follow everyone else that's followed.
So now we have Kyle Shanahan. Is it doing the same thing?
Yeah. So I've said this recently. If Bill Walsh was alive today, he would feel two things. First, huge pride for what has been built from the West Coast that now you see Andy doing, you see the Rams do, you see what the 49ers do, you see what the Vikings are doing, what the Dolphins are doing around the league, these innovative minds that have taken the league further. He would be very happy about that. He would also be super pissed about it because he's like, why didn't I think of this? You know what I mean? Because this is super cool. But I would tell him the rules changed, Coach. The rules changed. They can't launch anymore. There's too much room now. It's like college. And they filled that space. Innovative minds, less than 10 in the league, unfortunately. And then if you can get to one of those innovative places and quarterback one of those teams, you have a chance to go the distance.
Okay, so your father, so am I. I know body confidence sport.
Thank you.
Is so important to you because it has nothing to do really with football. It's more right with keeping kids in sports, isn't it?
Half of girls in America step away from sports after 14 because of how they feel about in their skin. And my girls in high school, why I'm here, Doug, is because I helped out with flag football in California for girls, the first time it's ever been played.
Yeah.
And I witnessed the sense of inclusion that was overwhelming, and then also their love of the game as they learn the game. And I mean from scratch. We lost the first game 2-0, and they're like, what happened? And like, oh, we forgot to explain safety. Like, the game started from scratch. By the end, Dad, this is my favorite sport. So empowerment inclusion, and then how girls feel about themselves. Dove has done something to put together for coaches, and that's why I want to promote it, because if coaches can get a hold of it, they can now have the verbiage, the language to help girls feel confident in their bodies so they can continue to play sports. And that's what we want. We want the girls out there playing. Flag football is in the Olympics now for girls. It's going to take over dance. It's going to take over volleyball. Like, after I watched this fall with girls flag football, every girl in America is going to be playing flag football. Not because it's football, because they love the game.
Yeah.
And Body Confidence Sports is really about a program to help girls after 14 stay in the sport, stay in the game. Go play it. Go play it for fun, for the good of it. And I'm all for that. No, I have 2 girls in high school, and it was very resonant with me. So when they asked me to do it, I said, I'm in.
Hashtag keep her confident is the best way to get on board. Steve, it's absolutely a pleasure
Doug,
to catch up with you.
I love chatting with you. We got to do it more often.
Anytime.
Okay, buddy.